webinar. Our partner provider today is AnalytAIx. At this time, all lines have been placed on mute to prevent any background noise. We will have a question and answer period throughout the presentation. You can type your questions using the pane at the right of the screen. The presenters also have questions for you. If you'd like this presentation, please email me at mschaefer@cihq.org. This webinar is being recorded and will be available at the Partner YouTube channel within a couple of business days. This group is going to provide excellent information. Please note there are no CEUs provided. It is my pleasure to turn the mic over to Noel. Noel, you have the floor.
Hello, everybody, and thanks for the invitation today to talk a little bit about some of the work we've been doing, but really the kudos belong to ECU and Julie Oehlert, who's here with us today. My name is Noel Zermatt. I'm the co-founder and chief operating officer of AnalytAIx. We are a company that focuses on essentially allowing people and organizations to talk to their data. We believe as our core why that you should be able to talk to your data and all the information hidden therein as easily as you talk to another person. We focus that on past, present, and future. If you had things in your past as an organization, and you glean any insight from that. If you have a large corpus of data that you need to talk to, can you access it right now? And in the future, everybody has an analytics tool, pun intended for our corporate name. But we believe it's more important to have a natural language approach, to be able to talk to an agent to say, what if I do this? And what I really want to talk about today is an experience we had with ECU Health, who are really the stars of this show. So I'm going to shut up here in a little bit and turn it over to Julie. We ended up connecting with ECU Health some months ago and discovered that one of their challenges was workplace violence prevention. And they had gone all in on trying to fix this. By the way, I am not a healthcare person. I'll say that out front. I come from the world of engineering and aviation. I spend a lot of time currently advising the US Air Force on how to integrate AIs on airplanes, believe it or not. But Vishal Bala and I, my classmate from Sloan, believe that we can do better with this technology. So when Julie approached us and said, we have a challenge, could you help us? We jumped at the opportunity. For those who don't know, and maybe everybody else knows, and I'm the person here who knows least about this, workplace violence prevention is not just a good idea. It is a tragedy that has far-reaching implications on a human level, on a fiscal level, on an operations level, on a patient experience level, and on a healthcare delivery level. If you have a nurse with 25 years of experience, and because of mismanagement or inability to look in the future, that nurse is assaulted by a patient, let's say in an ER, you are losing one of your top players. There's a retraining cost. There's a loss of performance on behalf of patients and the operations of the clinic. There's probably a cost impact. There's going to be a lost revenue impact. And that doesn't even begin to address the fact that a human being with 25 years of experience just got injured for reasons that could have been prevented. So you can imagine that this project, this challenge, was of deep, deep interest to us. And we worked with Julie to come up with a solution. And I will say this last part and then shut up. We are super excited that Julie and the ECU team won an award awarded to them in Boston last year for one of the best patient experience and healthcare innovations using new technology. By the way, if anybody's watching this and it looks like I'm in a hotel room, it's because I am. Vishal is on the other side of the world. We're about 6 hours from each other, and that's about 6 hours away from ECU. So forgive the quality of the audio and the setting, but this was important enough, and we wanted to support and shout out our key partner and stakeholder. So Julie, I'll give it over to you to talk a little bit about what happened, and maybe you and I can just have a little conversation.
Yeah, well, and we're all in different parts of the world because workplace aggression is a worldwide problem. It impacts healthcare inordinately so, but it is not unknown to all factions of work. And I wanted to add one thing, Noel, to the list of things that workplace aggression impacts, is it impacts the loss of trust with your team members and the loss of trust they have in leadership and the organization to protect them. And it also diminishes the trust that patients have in you. Because when there's an incident of workplace aggression, other people see it and it impacts them. So workplace aggression happens to a person. However, the post-traumatic stress can be for anyone in that area who sees it, hears about it, and is fearful. Just as a aside, nursing right now, I did a focus group with new nurses that hadn't yet chose where they were going to work when they graduated. And one of their main concerns were, how are you going to keep me safe? So we have a wicked problem before us. So I'm Julie. I'm the Chief Experience Officer for ECU Health. And I've worked at ECU Health in Eastern North Carolina for about 10 years. It is a rural academic health system with 9 hospitals. Our largest hospital being an over 1,000-bed academic medical center, and our smallest hospital is a 6-bed critical access hospital here in Eastern North Carolina. And I met Vishal because Vishal also has a background similar to mine. He has worked in healthcare and he's worked in hospitality industry, but has a true knowledge and backbone of what goes on in healthcare. And so I had been collecting data on workplace aggression for probably 2 years, maybe 2 or 3 years. But I don't know that I was doing anything with the data except wringing my hands over it. We were collecting it from incidents that happened that people reported in risk. It was also being collected from a call line that we had. It was being collected through our corporate compliance line. Look, we knew there was a problem, 100%. All of us as leaders were so worried. Our team members were speaking out, but we didn't really have a way to bring all the data together. So I had met Vish, and I've known Vish a while, but as a colleague, but I had met him and he said, can we just have a look at your data? Because remember, I'm not talking to my data. My data is just sitting there making me wring my hands. And so we gave AnalytAIx our data, access to our data. And what's really amazing about this work is when you look at the buckets that you have to do work in for workplace aggression to keep people safe, is you have to do prevention. So that's 100%. That's one huge bucket of work. You have to do patient awareness, huge bucket of work. You have to do workplace data analytics, another big bucket of work. You have to do team education, and you have to do team member follow-up. All of that in all those buckets that I just mentioned is impacted by what your data can tell you if you can see it, listen to it, and operationalize it. So when we gave our data to AnalytAIx, we got to see some really interesting things that I didn't even know at that time that the data could be predictive. I didn't know. I just wanted to know incidents. I wanted to know incidents. I wanted to be able to do some patient awareness of what kind of incidents we were having. I wanted to be able to educate our teams. So I didn't really know at that time that we could really do predictive analytics. So we took the data from all of those, plus the data from our police department reports, which I hadn't thought about. But again, Noel and Vish are not unknown to this work, right? So they know more about how to get this data and use it than I do. And we began to look at where and when incidents of workplace aggression were happening, where in our health system, when, by whom, and we began to see some patterns. Now, in the past, we have had advocated for different staffing models, different prevention. Remember, prevention is your core thing you want to do. And we just weren't able to do a good return on investment on that. I mean, that sounds strange because you don't want people to be harmed, but people are like, how do you know that adding 2 more police officers and locking these doors is going to even matter? Well, through the data that we gave to AnalytAIx, we were able to see time of day, trends, and where we were having incidents of workplace aggression. And through that, we could actually go to our board and go to our, I could go to my executive colleagues and say, I think with this data, we can have a different staffing model that'll actually do better for prevention. And then also we can educate those team members in those areas differently because we know what kind of incidents they are. And we also can do patient awareness in those areas. So I thought that was pretty amazing. So, I mean, when we were working together, Noel, what were you thinking? I mean, we gave you this data and all of a sudden what? You're like, oh my gosh, we can do so many.
We can do so many things. And I was taking a bunch of notes because you just brought up some golden points that I really want to hammer for the audience there. I'll start with one of the last ones that you said, Julie, and I remember having a conversation with folks. The results ended up matching the collected wisdom, roughly, of the folks in the organization, right? So it's not like we came up with something that was crazy or outside of the bounds. It's something that made a lot of sense to the experts who saw the problem from a bunch of different ways. But I remember you and I having a conversation with Vishal was in there, and it was just a brief comment, but what basically came out is, now I can justify this because it's not just somebody's good idea or their, rule of thumb or their guess. This is now backed by data and analysis. Can you talk a little bit to that?
So I think we knew there was a problem in some of the areas that were targeted were emergency departments. But covering your emergency department 24/7 with a police force is maybe not feasible in a variety of ways. But knowing what days and times really made our us and our executive team say, okay, we can really see it now. It's doable. We can put on a different officer during this time. We can put a different officer overlapping on this time. And within reason, with the data, we can think about that would pretty much cover versus kind of a crisis response. Correct. Which of course, a crisis response is costly. And
exactly.
Working on workplace aggression is always worth it, but all healthcare organizations are constrained of what they can do. So they want to use their resources wisely.
So in a resource constrained environment where you can't peanut butter spread a solution over everything, you could find out, it's sort of the rule of constraints. Let's find where there's most impact to be had, and then let's apply the resources there. And that's ended up what happened. You had another couple of comments more towards the beginning where you were relating the story, which is that you collected a lot of data, but you didn't know what to do with it. And in your professional estimation, how common is that for organizations out there? Because we see it a lot that people say, well, that which is measured gets fixed, right? But there's that golden thread between collecting the data and then actually doing something with it. And in a system as complicated as a healthcare system, when you are gathering all sorts of information, it seems to us that there's a lot of entities that are collecting a lot of data and then say, now what?
Yeah, and I think it's common. And there's a couple reasons why. Is it really serious work on workplace aggression started post-pandemic? I mean, it's acute recognition of a chronic problem. I mean, so I need to be real about that there's always been incidents of workplace aggression, but we became very attuned to it through the pandemic when the polarization in society escalated that workplace aggression. So what happens is when you didn't already have a well-baked system, those incidents get reported in different places. And if people aren't putting those things together, they can't see the whole picture. So like your corporate compliance line, which everyone has, is that reporting? Are people not reporting because there's nowhere easy to report, and are they just talking about it? Are some people reporting it to human resources? What is human resources doing with it? Is some people reporting it to the state? They can do that. So all these disparate points, and if because we haven't been organized in healthcare, there was no central place. So as I was starting to gather it in a central place is when I got alarmed. I was like, oh no, there's a lot of this data. It's not even in the same format. I don't have the same information per event. It's a mess. And so I don't know my incidents. I don't know how bad the problem is. And then guess what? People aren't that comfortable reporting because they don't know where to report and they don't know if you're going to do anything anyway. So I think the other piece of this success story is once we saw what we didn't have in the data, because you would tell us, you would say, but this data set doesn't have the aggressor in it. This data set doesn't have the location.
Sure.
We were like, ugh. So through those conversations, we got very good at getting the right data through every report to get even better data, which helped us better with our predictions.
Can I pull on that thread for a moment? Because I remember those conversations, and subsequent to that, what we have found, and in the other work that I do for the government and the military, we see this, and for research organizations, one of the research organizations I work with actually addresses, and the challenge is this, that most of the data that is out there is not ready to be ingested by these tools. And that is not an isolated problem or an isolated challenge. It is a legacy challenge. So almost every single time that you make the decision and say, you know what, and I want to ask you this one again, you identified a wicked problem, your words, and I love that term because there's a connotation of what a wicked problem. It's beyond hard, right? You had a lot of data, but that data wasn't in a format that could be used. So, the data regularization, as we call it in the industry, and the data cleanliness, the structure, all that had to be worked. Once it did, then the project worked. And more importantly, the last part is really, to me, the golden one, is that now the organization goes, if I'm going to continue to use these tools, this is the approach that I need to use to gather and store this data, because I don't know what treasures I'm going to find in this data in the future, but I know that I will find some, so long as I'm careful enough at the beginning. How's your, have you seen an impact on that, or a change in procedures for?
Yeah, so we literally changed the way that workplace aggression events were reported. So we have an online module that collects certain data, and we have a telephone reporting that collects certain data. And so we put two areas and kind of put them together. We actually also, that reports into almost like a call center, because we realize that people want a human voice. Because if you let people just openly report by a telephone, you might get, I was hit yesterday.
Correct.
So again, you need to know a lot more. So we really have gotten more structured about how we collect data, and we've gotten more sophisticated. That's through coaching with all of you, because sometimes we had to prepare the data before we could have it analyzed. And I think there's more we can do. I mean, this is the beginning of healthcare understanding to do predictive analytics, but there's so much more that you can do in this space. And I think you and I've talked about that, right? Like you can look at incidents from the same patient. I mean, that's something that, that we're starting to think about, where, is there an alert for a patient who has had a history of harming our team members? What then? Sure. So again, I think we're just in the beginning in healthcare of really being able to, there's so many solutions that we need, like a wicked problem has 10 solutions, and we got to look at all 10 of them. We have to get to all 10 of them. We can't do that without really strong data partners.
Absolutely. And I want to go back to this comment of wicked problem. I look at a wicked problem as one where it has a bunch of causes. I may not know all of them. Like you correctly said, it may have many solutions. We don't know which is the right one. in many cases, what you do, there's a term of art that we use in the the systems world, which is called satisficing. It's a solution that satisfies your need and it's sufficient to move forward. And then you basically continue to build on it, like you're saying. Hey, we haven't scratched the surface, and at least do something instead of waiting for perfect to arrive.
Yeah.
So I think many hospital centers, many clinics, many health organizations probably have a number of those wicked problems where some of the data they've captured may be able to help them.
Well, I loved what you just said, because I think that we think that the problems are located in only one area. We think that it's going to be ER, ICU. We're going to think about that. We have preconceived notions of where it's happening, but the
Correct.
reality of it is that when we looked at our data, we found out that some of these incidents were happening in our clinics fairly routinely.
Correct. Yep. And Vishal just joined us with a super loud background there, but that's okay.
I can mute myself.
There we go. All good. Vish, just to bring you up to speed, we had a really good conversation with Julie just about sort of the genesis of the project. I gave a little update on what we'd been doing. Talked about Julie's experience and talked about the award that they won in Boston, and then she actually had a really thoughtful presentation of sort of the chronology of what the challenge was, what they ended up finding out with us, what we helped find out, and we've been having a conversation on some of the terms or some of the highlights of that. The fact that this is a wicked problem, the fact that they were collecting data, that we collected a bunch of data, we knew we had a problem. What do we do with it? The data regularization piece, the fact that with having a digital, a science-backed, statistics, mathematics-backed solution, a lot easier to now go to a set of a board member or an executive and say, this is not just a good idea, this is something that we can point to that had happened. I was just gonna, see the time. Julie and I and Vish could probably have a huge conversation here, but maybe now as Vishal joined us, a good time to open this up for questions from the audience or from the organizers or from anybody else.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I can see them.
Julie,
Maybe it's under the questions tab.
I hear Michelle.
There we go.
Julie, will you tell us more about your award?
Yeah, so we put in together for an innovation award for how we were able to scope our police force using predictive analytics to improve safety for our team members. So really to justify a new staffing model for our police officers. And this was a big ask. I'm going to just say I think we were asking for 17 or maybe it was even 22 FTEs. That's in healthcare, in rural America, that's a big ask. But when we saw the data and when the executive team saw the data and saw where incidents were happening and what time and how we were going to overlap that staff to do it in the most cost-effective way, but the safest way for our staff, they thought that was really responsible, really good, responsible data, and we were able to get that approved. And so we got an award for that.
I was applauding in ASL there.
No. Predictive analytics to do better staffing to keep your team members safe. I mean, it was an HR conference and HR people were in love with it, right?
Love it.
Yeah, totally. It was a staffing optimization problem and predicting where they will need how much staff, which we were able to assist with.
So Julie, how is it working with an AI firm? And what do you think is different about analytics in particular?
So that's really funny.
Should we close our ears or go on mute?
That's really funny because I wouldn't say they were an AI firm if you asked me. So I know that they use really high level predictive AI, and they have explained that to me, but they are a healthcare solutions firm in my mind. And also because Vishal has such a strong healthcare background, I don't have to have solutions that don't make sense for healthcare. So I know that they use technology and they're a technology firm, but they're really just a solutions firm for me. So, and I am not particularly technical. I love data, but I'm not particularly technical.
Julie,
And
that is
Julie was
the
a great
nicest thing. Oh, go ahead, Vish.
Yeah. Sorry for the background noise, people. Julie is a great partner. She tells you exactly what she thinks, so you don't have to guess.
Yes.
And her team was amazing. So we spent a fair amount of time on the floor really understanding their workflow and the problem, which led to them being engaged in creating the solution and the buy-in. So change management was awesome, Julie. Way to go.
Yeah.
Julie, I just want to highlight, first off, thank you for the very kind words and checks in the mail, as they say. No, just kidding. The fact that you said something that I want to key on what I think is important to us on that, right? I think when people look at AI, they go, oh my goodness, it's either threatened because I don't understand this, or you're selling me snake oil because now I just append AI to anything and, charge a premium.
Yeah.
We have taken pains to, in our company, to focus on, why do we use this? It's a tool. And there's actually, there's Sloan School of Management where Vishal and I both has a construct. It's a tool, it's an agent, it's a schedule, it's a manager, and there's a spectrum of capabilities that these tools can provide. And we have taken a very conscious choice to say we are always going to keep a human in the loop, on the loop, whatever you want to term of art you want to use, so that this isn't some genie running amok with your process, but rather it's a tool that you wield just like a power tool or a drill or anything, but your throughput is now vastly improved. And the point about focusing on outcomes, I really appreciate that, Julie, because that at the end of the day, that's, I can gild a lily and promise a bunch of magic, but if that magic doesn't have demonstrable, measurable change in your organization, we're just, this is really not going anywhere, and we're not really creating the change that we want. This was very near and dear to our hearts because a third part of what we believe as an organization, and it sets us, it puts us in a sometimes uncomfortable situation, is that we're not in the business of reducing headcount. Right, so we tell that to any new client who says, "Hey, we'd like to learn more about what you're doing." We say, just to let you know, if you're looking to get rid of people, we're not your guys. So you're free to get your money back. So this sort of turned that on its head, and for us personally and professionally, it was hugely satisfying because we could actually use the data to say, no, you don't need to cut people. Here's where you need to add them, and here's why. And let's be precise. And let's not peanut butter spread this. Let's be very accurate. And at the end of the day, it worked.
Yeah.
So super. We've got a question from George Contreras. Since data has to be prepared for analysis, how far away are we from a time when AI will be able to interpret raw, unformatted data?
Ooh, all right. Can I take a stab at that from the point of view of other stuff that I'm doing? There is a massive risk to have data formatting and data regularization done autonomously without a human in the loop, because you run the risk of that data having errors, which your machine then takes as truth. And now you are starting right off the gate with a very, very bad and biased model, right? So that's about the simplest way to describe it. There are many tools out there that promise to do data regularization. I can tell you that none of them work to the levels of what we call in the industry precision and recall, which is two types of error that we're looking at. they just don't do it. We're not there yet. As I mentioned previously, I worked with some research labs, and the sort of behind the scenes truth on one of these major national research labs is that they have a team of about close to 100 data scientists and young engineers whose only job is to look and at a vast number of data sets, and they are using a combination of human ingenuity and analytical tools to do data regularization, because that is the first non-negotiable step to actually incorporating these AIs. So to George, the question is, how far away are we? In my professional view, I hope we're very far away from that. You know, I can never say never. The future is bright. We had to wear shades, and we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. But what we have seen, the state of the art right now, and the trend lines where they're going right now, is that the best data sets, the cleanest data sets, the ones that end up being used for the best outcome with these tools are the ones that are cleaned with human supervision in the loop.
Wonderful. Does anyone else
Hey,
have questions?
can I just add one piece?
Yes, thank you, Bish.
Sorry, I'll just add one quick piece. So George, one thing we see is that the qualitative data actually is easier for us to utilize and regularize, if you will, than the quantitative if it's a mess. And secondly, another approach is, you know, we can start collecting data in a clean manner, and doesn't take very long to start building up sufficient data to start getting directional indication, so that you know, you're going to be better than you were yesterday with direction. You may never get an exact, you're going to be 82.63% or whatever prediction, but you can get the directional very accurately, very quickly. So one methodology we utilize is to help our clients start collecting data immediately in a methodical manner.
So, and just to pull on that, Julie, you mentioned at the beginning you had been collecting data specifically for this project for, was it just a little over 2 years?
Yeah, 2 or 3, I think. Okay.
So in the big scheme of things for a clinic or a hospital center, that's 3. That's really not that much, right? It's a large amount of data, but in the big scheme of things, when you have data that may have been collected for, I don't know, 15, 20 years, it's pretty recent, and still it can give you good insight.
Yeah.
The other thing, just to add on this, that we are able to do is also start ingesting real-time data, whether it's from cameras, sensors, you know, RTLS devices, and so on and so forth. So again, you can start collecting information and making sense of it pretty.
All right, we have another question from the audience. Ibolalar, how do we make sure that AI results are not fake or manufactured by the AI imagination? Cross-reference the source.
Yes. So this goes back to, Michelle and I have had endless conversations on this, and with the rest of our team, little nugget. This is one of my main focuses, but just, you know, some people knit, I write. So I advise groups of authors on the use of AI as well, which is really interesting because they're at an extreme where they don't trust this technology at all. So the question is, how can you trust it? If you are putting your data through an LLM, what our professor at Sloan said is that first report is going to be wrong, right? No matter what, that first answer you get from that prompt is going to be wrong. But that's not what we're doing. What we're doing is we're building a system using different types of AI and analytical tools to give you an answer that, because we have used training sets and then used test data and actually looked at the way that this is built, gives you a very dependable answer, right? So if I just said, if I went to ChatGPT right now and said, here's my list, can you help me? You're probably not going to get a really good answer, right? But if you use the LLM, and I'll just give you a sneak peek, in another way, and that is basically as a translator between you, the human, and the machine learning and the analytical tools that we have underneath it, then the game changes, right? Because I can do statistics on something and I can show you with a very high degree of accuracy, precision accuracy, recall, whatever we use, what the outcome may be. And that's really what we're doing. The magic is not in having an LLM come up with, you ask it about workplace violence and it gives you the recipe for turkey dressing. The hard work is in building, we call it a stack, and it's basically the Lego pieces that are built up to make sure that you are meeting Julie's needs in this case. And Julie's needs are, she needs some very precise numbers, and LLMs, ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, Grok, those things are not very good at this yet, right? In about 2 years' time, they may be, but right now what we do is we combine that, we integrate that with a machine learning layer if we need to do analytics, predictive analytics, or with just a statistics and analytical processing layer that we essentially program by hand. So great question. AI is a big area. AI is not necessarily LLM. So if you're talking about LLM, yes, you're probably going to have large language models. You're probably going to have an error or an error that you may not be able to catch, and you really can't rely on that output. The type of stuff we're doing weaves together, integrates together a variety of these AI tools to minimize that error and maximize an output to make it human readable and human executable.
Can I give another perspective just to enhance this? I'm going to oversimplify, so forgive me. Imagine a backbone. So we can get information from different organs into the backbone, right? So that's how we feed the data. Then it goes to the brain, which Noel was talking about is machine learning. So we train the brain, right? And then the large language model sits on top. And so that's the human interface. So we don't allow the ChatGPTs of the world to think per se. So you talk to the ChatGPT, it sends the message to the brain, and it takes that message and gives that to you, thereby maintains integrity.
And Michelle, if I can ask, did that answer the question? If I can, we can get a thumbs up or a thumbs down from the audience member.
Okay. Ebola, I'll leave that for you to respond to.
Okay.
Oh, yes, it makes more sense. Thank you.
Awesome.
Another question. How did your team identify and structure the initial discovery process, from recognizing data patterns, defining the core solution framework, and what signals helped confirm you were addressing the right internal problems? This is from Kyle Hill.
It's a really good question.
It's a really good question.
Vish, you want to talk that one? I got some thoughts.
Thank you. So essentially what we do is first we take exam.
I think we lost him. Whoops.
Noel, would you like to fill in while we get him back on the line?
We lost Vish and he was winking. The overall process, so I'm just going to restate the question to make sure I answer the last one. How do we essentially run the OODA loop? Observe, orient, decide, act, with understanding what the challenge was, what data we need to obtain, and what the decision was going to be, right? There is no simple answer to all of these, but in general, they follow this cycle of, I know that there's a challenge. I want to identify and orient myself to what the potential solution shape might be. That's in discussion with Julie and her team. Then we basically take the data that we ingest. One interesting piece of these new technologies is that you can actually have a lot of data, and as long as the data is regularized, it is less important. This is if there's any magic about AI or these ANNs, artificial neural networks, the sort of magic is this: you don't need to know what the model is in every case, as long as you have an idea of what the outcome should be. And if the pattern, is to be found within that system, then you will find it. That's a little bit different than previous tools that we've had in the past, where we need to essentially come up with, map out a process and map out a model and then test it, the old predict, test, validate of these models, and then see if it'll apply to something else. With these tools, as long as we know where the customer wants to go, if we have the data, we can identify a path. If it is feasible to get a path to get us there, we can work with these tools and build the tools that will get us to that outcome. The core piece, and this goes back to what Julie was talking about earlier, is knowing that you're there to offer a solution and have some idea of what that solution should be in concert with the client, so that you're offering something that's useful to them in a shape that's digestible, in a manner that is feasible. So if I had to distill this to like the most simple, what did you do? Julie had a problem, and we asked a bunch of questions, and we listened. And as we worked through this together, we asked more questions and we listened some more. And at the end of the day, there came a point where she goes, that looks very reasonable. That's actually, many of the experts, security experts on the team, thought that this would look something like that. And now you've given us the data. Actually, we didn't give it. We just uncovered the relationship in the data that Julie had already collected to actually justify that. Julie, is that a fair assessment?
Yeah. And I also want to say that I didn't know the linchpin of all the data, just to give an example, was I hadn't ever thought to pull in the police reports themselves. Now that seems strange, but we also have a reporting structure outside of that. And so we reported workplace aggression. But then when your team said, what about all the police reports? And I'm like, but what if they're not workplace aggression? You're like, but they are doing something, or they're preventing workplace aggression,
Correct.
or they're doing work. So take those reports. And when we put those reports in, which I wouldn't have thought to do, is when we got that rich overall look. Because now we said, guess what though? These police are over here doing something else. They're not even in the emergency room when they need to be. That's frightening. Correct. And then they're also doing prevention things that never get to workplace aggression. We think we wouldn't have seen them. So again, sometimes people don't know what data they have, and that's the relationship, right? Is to think through some of those things to get to like data that's rich.
I love that example, and blinding flash of the obvious. Now I remember that exact conversation, but I think that speaks to a larger issue, which is, you may be sitting on your golden solution, but you may not know it yet, not because anybody's not doing their jobs, because everybody's super busy in every organization, right? You have 30 hours of work in a 24-hour day, and now you have to solve a significant wicked problem. And sometimes it's useful to have somebody come in and say, what about this? Did you think about, what about that data? And once we're able to do that and have that conversation, then the science works, the mathematics, the statistical analysis, the machine learning, it works, and it works on behalf of the client. But it's a discovery, back to this OODA loop. We spent a lot of time ingesting, Julie's needs, her answers, and then going back and saying, had you considered that? And that one key moment was one of the was one of the more impactful ones.
Yeah.
Right. Kyle added to his question, when designing your data systems, how did you balance human decision-making roles with the automation layer, particularly across positions that manage data flow? Also, does your company offer ongoing support or training for remote teams and frontline staff?
So the easy question is the last one. Yes, we have found out that an educated customer is a great customer because they kind of get what we're doing. So when we ask questions, they'll go ahead and they know enough to go, yeah, these guys aren't trying to fleece us or what have you. So yes, absolutely. We prefer, we have a number of tenders and responses and projects. Some of them, as a matter of fact, this is just recently, and no harm, no foul, but there's a couple of government entities that are saying, hey, I just want you to do this, but we don't, international governments that are saying, but we don't want you to do the sustainment. And we need to be very careful with the folks that we're teaming with, saying, listen, this is not going to end well if you end up crafting an AI system, an AI-powered ML system, and then just let it go. These things are like any other digital tool. They need some upkeep. It's not heinous. It's not crazy for the amount of resources that you spend on keeping them up. They provide great resource and great return on spend. So that's just, it's a different mindset that some organizations have. But the wiser ones realize, hey, this is, I mentioned earlier, we're not in the business of reducing headcount, but we are in the business of helping people be more effective. And sometimes that doesn't need to cost the world, but it does require maintenance of that tool. And it's kind of strange. People go, dude, what are you maintaining on a tool, on a digital tool? And my response is, how many iOS updates do you have on your phone? That's a recurring thing. But back to the harder question, which is, what is and I'm going to slightly restate this. What is that balance or that trade-off between manager oversight and letting the AI run amok, so to speak? So we are, I mentioned that spectrum beforehand. It's a tool, assistant, scheduler, manager. A tool is, hey, ChatGPT, give me a recipe for turkey stuffing. Okay. An assistant is like Siri on steroids. Hey, I want you to do these things for me on this date and this way. But imagine if Siri could go out and get a lot of data and help you out. Off you go. Scheduler is essentially now an AI that's telling you when things need to get done, or scheduling other AIs. And there's it may sound tiny difference between that and the assistant, but there's some significant issues in the science behind it because of time series and all the stuff that I won't get into. And then the last one is, manager, where it's basically an AI is managing the operation on its own. We've had AI managers or automated managers for a while in safety systems, but now we can actually get it into more higher cognitive work. And the short answer is that's a still evolving area. As a matter of fact, the U.S. Air Force is actively, there's a ton of research going on in this area in things having to do with airplanes and industrial control systems and all that. But when you start thinking about applying it to a hospital, a clinic scenario, a health center scenario, those organizations start to look the same, right? You have a lot of systems, you have a lot of people. Those are intermeshed. Sometimes you don't know the linkages between them. So are you going to let something run that autonomously? We are taking a little bit of a more cautious approach, which is we want to keep the human in the loop or on the loop at all times. The difference between in the loop and on the loop, and there's a number of other ways, but those are two easy ones to identify. Human in the loop is basically your decisions come to a point and you essentially do a go, no go decision or some other decision, and then the process continues. A human on the loop is where you're always looking at this process at the machine, and you can actually stop it and see it at any time. they both have their pros and cons. There's other constructs that we can use. The bottom line is we don't believe that we're at a point where we can just cede total control of operations to one of these engines just yet. So we have taken the approach of focusing on the data side, of talking to your data, of using these tools in a way that allows you to gain insights from your data that you've collected either historically or recently. Focus on the past, which is really, the perfect example in Julie's case. She had some legacy data that was recent, but it offered some insights into the future. We are focusing on, one of the areas we're working on is, for example, benefits analysis, right? Some of these benefits documents can be very, very deep and dense. And if somebody needs an urgent question now, a patient needs, or a customer needs, a stakeholder needs information now, how do you access it? You could do a Google search, or you could talk to somebody and say, how will this apply to me? And then essentially answer the easy questions until you get to a human. And by now the human's ready to go. And then the other one is looking at that data into the future. We're not yet, our company doesn't yet focus on what they call the ICS, the industrial control systems that are going to have that level of autonomy for the AI. It's an area that we're looking into because of some clients that are asking us to do so, but we're taking a very measured approach to say we need to have the human there. It's almost like I come from aviation, flew in the Air Force for a long time, and it's kind of the difference between a pilot pushing the autopilot on and then monitoring it, or pushing the autopilot on and then ejecting from the aircraft and saying, oh, the autopilot's going to take care of everything. Clearly, you want the former, not the latter, if you're a passenger on the airplane.
All right, Kyle has one last question. Our organization operates adult foster care homes across 20 locations and maintains both physical and digital records containing sensitive information on residents, employees, and incidents. If your company were guiding us through a full data system assessment, how would you instruct our team to compile and standardize these files, including medical, arrest, and hospitalization records, into a unified internal data framework? I'll let you answer that one, and then there's more to it.
All right, that's or first I'll say that sounds like a really interesting challenge. I can tell you I'm based in Florida. I live there. I live in the Tampa region, and firsthand experience with family members on how that care can be data challenging, so to speak. So, not knowing much of what you are doing or where you're based and all the details, I'd go back to this customer stakeholder first approach, which is to say, we get with you and go, hey, what's the challenge right now? What data do you need to talk to? What challenges do you have that you suspect that you could have answers within your data to help you have better performance, better care delivery for your population? And then we take a hard look. We unfortunately have a lot of experience in this, and I'm not talking about Julie. I'm talking about some of many of the other clients that we're working with who come to us and say, hey, here's all our data. Can you help us? And in every single time, we have discovered that our estimate on how long it's going to take to clean is woefully inadequate, because in many cases, this data is years and years old. And that's okay. That every single organization, I'm telling you right now, you heard it here first. If you have a problem with your data management, your data standardization, many databases, some are Excel, SQL, CSV, whatever, paper nav, all of that. You are not alone. You are like every single other organization on the planet, because before these tools came on board, nobody ever imagined that they were going to have to spend this much time to make their data play nice with the tools. And to the question that was asked previously, We're not there yet where I can just press a magic button and that data is going to be magic, and now I can ingest it into an AI. It's going to solve all my problems. It takes human work. So I would ask you that question, and then I'd ask where does your problem or your challenges live in time? Is this you have a lot of legacy data they want to get some insights for? Is this you have a lot of caretakers right now, care providers that need access to a lot of disparate data right now, immediately? Do you want to look at business or customer trends? And we could go from there. So give us a call.
Okay, he may have answered some of your questions here, but I'll finish it anyway. So how
Okay.
long does this assessment and organization phase typically take? I think you covered that. And what specific safeguards or compliance standards would you put in place to ensure the protection of our company, our residents, and our staff throughout the process? And then he provided examples, but I'll let you answer this first.
Yeah, so we use tools that are HIPAA compliant. That was from the beginning. So we've done our drawing a complete blank right now, but we actually have one of our assessments ongoing right now. Because most of the hard problems, the wicked problems, to use Julie's term, in many cases have to do with other people's data, right? So we need to safeguard that. So the safeguarding of the data is really, I'm not going to say it's an easy button, because it's something that we take seriously, and the fact that we have third-party validations or checks speaks to itself. The more challenging part, but it's kind of the fun part, is to kind of talk to the client and say, how should this data be delivered, and how should it be controlled? And the information that is gleaned from this data, how should it be disseminated? And in many cases, that is entirely a decision for the client to make, the customer to make. We help them, and one of the things that we do is come up with dashboards that can help. These are not your typical dashboards everybody's seen, pie charts and all that. These are dashboards that are culled from a variety of data sets. And one of the things we're working constantly on is to tweak them to make the so what of those charts very human readable. One thing we have seen is that in many cases, health centers have a challenge. They go to their favorite provider and they say, can you give me some charts? The charts come 2 weeks later. The charts are a bunch of gobbledygook, or they're PDF. And by the time people figure out what the charts meant, the problem has either metastasized, or it's no longer a problem because a worse one has taken root in the fertile ground of the first problem. So one thing we try to do very quick is provide you answers to your questions very quickly. That's a double-edged sword, right? Because some people go, oh, since I can ask a lot of questions and get a lot of answers, now I'm going to ask them constantly, and now you have this back and forth. That's a management issue, and happy to talk about that. But we believe that if you can at least get answers quickly and disseminate those quickly within your organization, that's better than the alternative. Any issues that are that come up with that, we'll help you deal with them. So the bottom line is, long answer to a short question. It really depends. The control of the data is, at the end of the day, going to be something that is determined by you. Who needs to see it? Who gets to access it? Do we want corporate sensitive financial data to be accessible to everybody on the team? What kinds of data should be accessible by everybody on the team? And that's something that's, every organization is different. We had a lot of people say, give me an app that can do that. And we just say, nope, because that's a very tailored process.
Okay, and here's some details. We want to talk to our data about prevention, we want our data, we talk to our data for prevention for incidents, measuring compliance metrics, medications, property management for managing multiple facilities, and prevent hospitalizations. And he says thank you, and he'll reach out to his team.
Good. Yeah, that'd be I'll tell you, full disclosure, the one that I heard out of that list that I'm going, we're we're starting on that with another client, is the asset management, the physical plant logistics piece that he mentioned there. The others, currently delivering in one way or another, and that's why my passionate defense of tailored projects, because we know how each one of these is different for everybody who we've had the pleasure of working with. The logistics one is something that we're working with, and that's just it's slightly challenging, mostly because it has to do with lat long, right? It's location issues that are that's an additional complication that we get. It's surmountable. We've done it. It's not our daily slice of bread or whatever, but happy to do it. Happy to talk.
All right, everyone, it's the top of the hour, so I'll give you back the rest of your day. Julie, thanks so much for dialing in from your own conference.
Thank you, Julie.
And
Thanks for having me.
yes, we
It was
lost
great.
patience.
Congratulations again.
Yes, congratulations. So watch for this recording to show up on the CIHQ YouTube partner page in the next couple of days. Thanks, everyone. Have a great afternoon.
Take care.
CIHQ, it's Michelle.